Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Reviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I am your host tonight and marketing manager, Mackenzie. And tonight, I'm joined by a fantastic panel. We are talking about another musical, the first ever musical. We did Oklahoma, and that was kind of the kickoff for song and dance really kind of got married together. But before that, the show that really got the ball rolling and paved the way for Oklahoma is none other than the musical Showboat. That's right. We're going all the way back to the olden days of 1920s with showboats and barges and cotton. So we are going back to that time period. We're going to talk about this really kind of interesting and also controversial musical. It is a hotly debated musical about whether or not we should still be talking about it and or doing it. So tonight we're talking about the 2014 production that was done. That was done with the San Francisco Opera, and it was directed by none other than Francesca Zambello, and many people will know her for her direction of the hit musical, The Little House on the Prairie, the musical. I'm kidding, that musical did not do well. But she's directed some other fantastic things. And she also is a guest professor at Yale. So shout out to you, Francesca. So yes, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I'm going to introduce my panel now because I'm so excited to have everybody on board. I have my roommate from first year at York, who has serenaded me many a times with his rendition of Old Man River. It is none other than Ben MacKinnon. Hello, Ben.
Hey. It's nice to see you again, Mac. I'm overjoyed to be sharing a little bit of time with you, especially for a musical that I have always loved the music from. In fact, I think you may recall sometimes in the shower, I don't know if I was serenading you or if I was just so loud that it penetrated the wall of your dormitory and you felt it was a serenade for you. Perhaps everybody felt serenaded during those times. But yeah, I've always loved the music from Showboat. This was a great chance to come take a look at it again and really do a bit of a deeper dive on some of the important elements of the production.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Ben. And I mean, I always felt you were serenading me, just as I serenaded you in the shower when I was there singing all all my greatest Les Mis hits. So it was a very musical dorm. I have to say.
I'll be honest, it was mostly for you, Mac.
Oh, I feel very warmed and touched. Well, Ben, tell me what's in your cup today. What do you got to drink?
So today I brought a tried and true concoction. In fact, I think it was the second most popular drink of that time, water.
I would say so, probably. I mean, the whole show takes place on the Mississippi, so.
Not anybody's first choice, but definitely a necessary second.
Yes, absolutely. And next for the panel, we have somebody who I've had the privilege of working with on The Music Man. She is a wonderful performer who I've seen play The Witch. She's done Mamma Mia, and now she's currently out in BC, of all places, heading up the education department at the, I'm going to get this right,
Canadian College?
Canadian College, there we go, that's it.
Yes, of Performing Arts, yes.
Of Performing Arts, but you really just got there this week.
I did. I took the ferry over from the mainland last Saturday, and I'm in Victoria currently. So I'm happy to be joining you from the West Coast.
You and Ben together, we got two West Coasties here tonight.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super based. You're enjoying beautiful views, I'm sure.
Yes. And we're based in Oak Bay, which is just like a beautiful part of BC, which is like right by the water. So it's pretty incredible. Whereabouts are you right now?
Burnaby, British Columbia.
Burnaby. Yes. Oh, yes. I know it well.
Love it. So, Lena, what's in your cup tonight?
Well, currently I have a cup of tea in my cup, but I have my pot close by so that I can refill as needed. And this new apartment that I just moved to, they have very tiny little mugs. And so I can only fit, like, there's literally like 125 mils of tea that I can pour out at once. So I just basically fill my pot and keep pouring. So that's what's in my cup today.
Love that. Love that. All right. And last but certainly not least, we are welcoming back to our panel today, Ms. Alicia Plummer. Hello, Alicia.
Hi. It's nice to be back. It's always a lovely time.
We love having you. This will be your third review.
Yes.
And plus also, and we have your fourth episode, which was your wonderful interview you did with Ryan all about doing Zoom performances during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All types of great stuff there. But now you're back once again. What's in your cup tonight?
I have, I got it in the wine section, but I'm pretty sure it's sangria.
And tonight I am back drinking from the official Cup of Hemlock, the cup. And I'm having my nice glass of cup of Earl Grey tea with a little bit of honey in it. And on the side, after I finish that, I do have, because I felt like we should have some nice hearty beverage, some nice root beer. Because, that fits the time period. Reminds me of that era, going out, having a nice beer at the end of the night. So there you go. But non-alcoholic, because I have to drive later. So there we go. But yes, all right, let us dive into this piece. And we're going to start off with our classic quintessential first question, which is, which character do we feel is best performed? And Alicia, I'm going to let you start tonight.
Awesome. All right. So the person or the character that I felt was best performed was Julie Laverne, who was played by Patricia Rossette. And I think she wasn't there for a long period of time throughout the play. But when she was there, I was so connected to her storyline. And I was rooting for her. I think out of most of the characters, I was so connected to what she was going to do and how she ended up being shunned and kicked out of the play, off the Showboat. And I was just feeling for her. And then the sad arc of her becoming an alcoholic, and then nothing really happens after that. And I think I love the way Patricia played her character. I like to see the development and the crash of the character as well. And yeah, I just want a story on just her. I think I would love to see what she's up to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, since I didn't really know this musical fully, like I knew some of the songs before, and I'd heard her song, and I thought that made me think, oh, she's going to be like a major part. Because I remembered the whole thing with the blood pact and things like that. And I remember reading about that and how that was at the time when this musical came out. That was a big plot point that they actually went into that topic about mixing blood. And it's the fact that she disappears. She totally just vanishes for two-thirds of the show. Not even 3/4 of the show. And she randomly pops back up, and you're thinking, oh, they're gonna have a nice reunion. She's gonna come back for the end of the story. And then she's gone again. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a really sucky character there. I was like, I would wanted more of her.
Yeah, exactly.
I bring her back for more stuff. But it's also interesting, since we had done Oklahoma, you could start seeing some of the inklings of the other main female supporting characters that are going to come up from Rogers and Hammerstein later on. You have Aunt Eller, Nettie, is it Nettie? No, Elena, you played her. I'm not Nettie Fowler.
Yes, Nettie Fowler.
Yeah, it is Nettie Fowler.
In Carousel.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So you have all these great female supporting characters, have these great classic songs, and then they kind of disappear for a bit of the story, and then they come back at the finale again. So just thinking about that, I was like, okay, I can see where Rogers and Hammerstein are making these bridging connections throughout history as this musical tapestry got woven. So yeah, I have to agree. I love that character. Love it, love it, love it. Ben, who did you have as your first pick or best performed of the night?
Well, to some degree, I agree with Alicia due to the fact that Patricia Rossette's portrayal of Julie Laverne, she did a good job performing, sure, but for me, the best part of her was the voice. Her singing was absolutely spectacular. But if I'm going to give which character I think was best performed overall, I really have to give it to Jo and that was played by, I believe it was Morris.
I can tell you. Joe is played by
Morris Robinson, I recall. And not only was he perfectly cast well, because I think that was, a part of why it goes over so well, Joe. He's perfectly cast. One might be able to argue kind of typecast. But not only was he perfectly cast, he also brought the goods to the table. I think one of the big questions whenever we do a play like this is, how are the leads going to tackle some of the most iconic pieces, right? Are they going to nail it, or are they going to leave something to really be desired? I remember feeling the same way, actually, when I saw the most modern production of Jesus Christ Superstar with John Legend as Jesus. And when he goes for Gethsemane, I remember before I had seen it feeling almost anxiety on his behalf, going, is this going to replicate Ted Neely's performance? Is it going to be different? In the differences, will they be positive? Will they be negative? So the same feeling I had waiting for kind of Joe to open these big boisterous pipes and give us Old Man River. And it goes over really well. And part of why it goes over well, I think, is we know Joe better in this performance. In the 1951 movie, for example, Joe is more of sort of a representation, if you will, of the Black plight. He gives voice to the River Jordan, but he's not a character that we focus on to understand his relationships with others. In this production, we get to see a little bit more of him relating with Queenie, who, his woman, and relating with other characters on the stage. So we really feel for Joe. We have more of a connection with Joe. And in the pieces, when he's performing them, it goes over really well, at least in my opinion.
Agreed. Like, he just has such a physical presence on stage. Like, he just fills that space. Not like he just fills the whole room with his character and his voice, that you couldn't help but be drawn to him. Like, the minute he came out, I knew exactly who he was. I was like, got it. We got our Joe. There he is right there. And then you're right. I mean, it's just waiting for that big moment where the song is coming, and it's kind of like you're just waiting. It's kind of almost like in Carousel, where you're waiting for like No One Is Alone, or sorry, Never Walk Alone, and you're like, okay, it's coming, we're getting there, okay. But like, it's just one of these moments where like the minute he did the song, it was like, oh, okay, we're good. Like that moment was nailed.
And you can take pretty much any old Joe and stick him in there, and if he's got some pipes, you don't have to focus on him so much. You can carry the show with the rest of the characters as long as he delivers that song well and the other songs well. He can sing, he can move a little bit. Okay, great. But for this Joe, we feel him as a human being. He's more believable because of how believably he relates with the other characters on stage.
Yes.
So I liked that part.
Agreed. Alana, who was your shout out of the night?
I feel like I'm going to be like way over in left field here. My shout out of the night actually was the character of Ellie, who is played by Kirsten Wyatt. And I thought she was a bit of a ringer. In watching the show, watching the performances, I thought so many of them were like just vocally spectacular. There was a lot of people with some incredible pipes. And I know just in terms of the history of the show and it sort of coming out of like a light opera tradition, and it's very sort of a classical sort of intonation that is used in these performances. And so in the way that it was cast with these very, very classically trained, legit singers, some of the vocal performances were really wonderful, like Joe's performance, like Julie's performance, and like very connected, sort of emotionally. However, then I found at times that in the actual scenes and in some of the scene work, I felt a little less connected with some of the characters at points. And I felt that Ellie, the character of Ellie, and I don't really know her body of work, Kirsten Wyatt's work. I know she's done a lot of sort of more traditional musical theater type of work. And I guess that maybe speaks just to, I guess, my own like sort of personal preference, sort of aesthetically speaking, I guess. But like, it felt overall as a whole, her performance felt a little bit more rooted, sort of in character, and you know, some of her choices felt more real to me than others. And I felt like she did a lot with a more minor type of character. So that was my that's my shout out, I think, for in terms of my favorite performance.
Love it. I'm loving this variety we're getting with this. I have to, like, once again, like, watching it, the thing that reminded me of, once again, of this is the C that's going to lead us to somebody like an Ado Annie, or like what's her name? The best friend. Why am I forgetting her name? The best friend from Carousel. Not Julie Jordan.
Yes.
Carrie Pipperidge.
Carrie,
Carrie Pipperidge.
It's these archetypes that keep popping up in like all of the like Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, and like you can see them. Well, I guess it's not Rodgers, but Hammerstein.
Yes.
Like the seeds of those archetypical characters that sort of get fleshed out later. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I liked watching, that, because I liked how this show and the cast did such a great job of showing where history was going to go. Because if you're somebody like us who knows musicals and knows history of these shows, then you kind of can know where like things are eventually going to grow to, and where we're kind of going to grow. Because like from Ellie, you move to Ado Annie, and then move on to Carrie Pipperidge, and then you get Anita and West Side Story at the end of the 1950s. Like, it's just this progression of the best friend, female supporting character that just kind of grows over time. And I also loved how Ellie actually had such sincerity when she ran into her friend again.
And that's like, actually that's what really sold it for me, actually, was like in the second act when she returned, and there was just like a sort of authenticity. It felt like she sort of connected with, just like it wasn't too much, because I mean like, those kind of character performances too can be really big, and it just felt like she sort of tapped into something very real.
Right, and nicer to see that softness, especially when you have a show that is overly dramatized and sometimes edging almost all the way into caricature. So to have a moment or two where we can take a breath and have those more genuine moments, it really elevates the authenticity of the scene.
Agreed. My shout out is someone who, the minute I saw his face, I recognized him, and it is Bill Irwin, who played Captain Andy. And it's funny though, because I grew up with him on CSI, where he played the serial killer Nate Haskell, kind of like the real big bad of a few seasons that escaped from prison. They got to go after him, and he has such a great rubber face to him that he just emotes so well. Like he, and his whole body is just rubber. Like, just watching him move around on the stage, like, he's such a showman. Like, he also reminded me of, like, I would have loved to see Bill Irwin play Harold Hill, because I can just see him weaving his way through River City, just like he weaves his way on and off the boat and into the crowds to kind of drum them up for the show that night. And like and then the fact he does like a whole one-man show the first act, which is just like hysterical. Like, once again, just Captain Andy killing it when like the show's gonna fall apart, and he somehow is magically able to bring it all back together. Yet in Act 2, when he's going out for his daughter and finally standing up to his wife, the wonderful, like, once again, wonderful, like, playing that classic kind of shrewish harping wife all the time, who's always kind of on his back, and he has these great kind of moments where he gets to kind of stand up for himself, and you really just are endeared to this guy who is just a good, hardworking guy trying to earn a living, doing something he enjoys. He has a daughter, he has a wife, and he also is acting as the supporter for all these other performers on the boat. Like, he is very supportive of everybody. It doesn't matter your race, your gender. He's just going to support you. Like when the men come for Julie Laverne, and he's very kind of protective and kind of stands up for the moment. It's like, he's a good, like, he literally is the captain of the show, kind of keeping everybody together as best he can. It's wonderful. So yes, Bill Irwin, who went from evil serial killer in my mind to happy-go-lucky boat captain. So Love that. All right. Let's head into now. What was our favorite production or design element of this mammoth show? Elena, I'll let you start this one.
Okay. For me, it was the theater scenes on the boat, and I love how. I mean, I love how it gave such a sense of place. You knew exactly where you were. It just it really worked for me. So all those theater scenes on the boat that was my favorite design element.
Agreed. That boat was just spectacular. Like, you can't do Showboat without the boat. Like, I'm sure people have tried to revive it without the boat, or like done some rickety rackety projection-y shadow design somewhere to like save the money, and it's like it's just not the same. Part of what Mitch told the show back in the day was there literally was a giant showboat that rolled out on stage. Like, that was the big deal of this piece, and so the fact that you got to see a real big set was something we don't see anymore on stage. It was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful to watch. I have to agree that boat set was just fantastic. The way they utilized that so many ways, different levels, it was great. Ben, how about you? What was your favorite production or design element?
Favorite production or design element of the production? Hopefully there's space actually to talk about, because for me, I didn't want to focus as much on the technical production and design aspects as what stood out for me was the directing from both a scene layout perspective in conjunction with the choreography. That's what I liked. And what I'm talking about is framing the action of the scene. Okay. I think they did a really good job throughout the musical to frame the action well. An example of this is when we have Angela Renee Simpson, who's playing Queenie, right? And she has her solos and she can dance. Don't get me wrong, she can dance. But some of those folks are hardened, trained dancers. So we're handing them a little bit of the bigger movements, the bigger choreography. And in a way, we're framing Queenie, and she's reflecting and mirroring the choreography in a smaller way while still remaining the most important person in the scene. So I like to see, stuff like that. We're elevating Queenie's choreography by relying on the team's dance training, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
Other ways that we see examples of framing the action, Joe's solo, of course, where we have him kind of doused in light, delivering those long lines to the end. Or, for example, the montage shot at the end, that kind of reconciliation between Gay and Noli. And we catch that sort of still shot, which is just such a good parting gift. So I think that was a common overarching thread that I wanted to give a bit of a shout out to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Once again, with a big show like this and a big cast, it can get very easy to get overwhelmed with those elements and kind of lose the picture work that theater does so well with the proscenium art, where you can create these beautiful moments or shots of time that really are kind of that can get lost with the big cast size like that. So I totally agree with you.
Sorry. No. I was just going to say, it's really interesting because, this is a conversation I'm interested in having, because sometimes I find, especially with old, sort of classic musicals, there is that structure of where you have a singing chorus, you have a dancing chorus, you have your leads, and it's very sort of almost segregated in a way where if you're there as a singer, you're basically kind of standing in a picture and you're parking and barking. And if you're a dancer, you're probably doing something ridiculous and, aren't actually singing, you're mouthing the words while people sort of, carry the load for you. And then everything sort of happens around the leads. And I thought it was very interesting, this production, because this was 2013 that this happened.
Yeah.
And it felt like a very sort of, what's the word? Old fashioned sort of way of staging, a musical for 2013 standards, because it really sort of adhered to that, like you said, that framing of here's Queenie, like when I forget the name of the song, and she's on the box and she's doing the choreography, and there's all the dancers around her doing the choreo.
Can't Stop Loving That Man of Mine.
Was that
right.
the one?
I think that's the one. The one.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, it lends for certain advantages in the sense that you can have like a spectacular singer like Queenie out there, who has to do nothing but like, again, like focus on, just giving voice to the piece. But then, I mean, there is something too sometimes that I find a bit sort of stilted about like, this is the structure and this is what the structure is and how it plays out.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. We're going to get to that in my other side of the spectrum, but you're onto something there with that. You are very much on my mind track there. So we're going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that, because that is something that I am very interested to pick up on. But first, Alicia, give me, what was your favorite production or design element?
Okay, I have two kind of on the same slope of how much I love both of these elements. I really liked the orchestra at the very beginning. I haven't heard of Showboat before until now. I know I don't know if I'm the only one, but I really liked the easing into everything with the music and the orchestra, and I was immediately intrigued. And honestly, it might also be because I haven't been to a theater in a very long time and heard an orchestra, but I was immediately like, I'm ready to watch a show. Second thing that I really loved was, I'm going to continue talking about the orchestra for a couple seconds, because I like that they introduced the show with the orchestra in the first act, and then they did it again in the second act. Okay, second thing, the costumes. I really enjoyed the costumes in the show. I love the period pieces, the Victorian dresses, and then everything also moved into the 1920s with the that
World's
period.
Fair, the World's Fair Chicago era,
exactly. I loved to see the costume elements change and develop, and I felt like I was moving along with them in time, or I guess back in time and then moving forward. It was a really, really cool thing to watch, and the costumes kept me engaged, combined with the music as well. So those are my things that I really enjoyed.
Well, I mean, I'm going to take kind of everybody's and kind of meld them together into what my favorite element is, which is, I can only describe it as the epicness of this production. It's such a lost thing we have in theater these days because of the budgets and the finance it would take to fund something like this. The fact that we don't get these shows anymore, these kind of really big shows that have Alicia, as you pointed out, have a big orchestra that are literally like massive, like the wall of sound that gets produced from them. Like, you can just look into the pit. Normally in a pit, it's like 10 people and like half of them are on keyboard. It's a thing. But like the fact that like you get that old Broadway sound, that rich sound that pops up. And then you have the costumes, like just the fact that you have a cast of this size all dressed to the nines and in character. Like, you can track people throughout the show and their costumes age and grow with them. Like Joe's costume is totally different, just like he is by the end, because he's gone through decades of time. Like, he is now an older man, yet there's still a timeless quality to his outfit. Like, there's that, like the way they dressed him just had that timeless feel to it, where it didn't feel like it was one particular time period. While like other people like Queenie, like she changed her outfits as the decades went on. Like same thing with like Captain Amy, going from his captain gear to getting into his regular clothes to go visit his daughter in Chicago. Like just the costume work and just the sets, as Elena said, like the fact that we do get a boat on stage. It reminded me of when Titanic, the musical, was on Broadway back in the 90s, and they actually also had a ship on stage that they sank every night. Like, there's just something about that epicness and just the grandness of this theatrical experience that we don't get anymore, really. Like, I can't think of the last time I went to a show and felt epic. Like felt the true epicness of it. like that's something that's just missing these days, because unfortunately we got to pay the bills of the theater, and to do that we got to kind of reduce the orchestra size, reduce the cast size, we got to do things a little bit smaller. And so yeah, it was just nice to see some big old theater there again. Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we dive into our weakest production or design element? And I'll kick this one off because I'm going to piggyback off something Elena said about the way, and Ben kind of also alluded to this too, where it's the way the direction was done sometimes, particularly with the ensemble, where like, as Elena said, like you could tell there were certain people who were like, this is the opera company. They are going to be your singers. You have the dancers who are going to dance. And you're going to have the principals who are going to be principals. And then, as Ben said, sometimes they drifted a lot into caricature versus character. And that was my biggest thing, was there was quite a few characters like Pete, the villainous bad guy of Act 1, who was like right out of like a Scooby-Doo, like have it on the twang, southern evil man with a mustache. Like that was literally his character in a nutshell. And I was like, Pete actually is one of the characters you actually can really do something with, because he is a real life villain that we all know exists in the world. So like the fact that you made him into a caricature versus actually in 2013 actually allowing this character to exist and be his true villainous self without the over the top comedicness that character was done with. Like there's like that type of thing there. Like, yeah, I even say sometimes Queenie almost drifted into a little bit of caricature with her performances sometimes. And I was like, no, stay. You're on the right track there. You have the moments. Yeah, like Ellie was the one that was kind of closest to walking that line of caricature in Act 1 when she's the performer, and then in Act 2 she has that flip, and now she's on the neutral, serious track of her story. Yes, Ben, go. You're gonna chime in.
I completely agree with you. That's all I was going to say, especially with regard to Pete. I mean, his kind of vibrating portrayal. It edged over kind of dramatic and into caricature for me. And that was, like you said, kind of an overarching challenge. And it's tough to differentiate whether that is on the directing or is it on the acting, because there were some times where there was a real genuine authenticity that was found, but there were other times where people come out, and sometimes it was when they had a funny line, like, this is my line now, everybody laugh, you know? or other times when it's their moment and they're sort of supposed to be taking the spotlight because that's the action of the scene, but they go so far when everybody's working already to give them the attention. So like less work could be done and more sort of accuracy, I think, has been put in those instances.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very big show with a big cast and some big acting choices that were done on stage.
Yeah,
Alicia,
I 100% agree with both of you. Yeah.
Do you wonder? Okay, well,
sorry, go ahead. I wasn't meaning to jump in. I just was affirming. Yes.
Okay, Alicia, give it to me. What was your weakest element?
Honestly, for me, I found it hard to find a weak element as I was watching it. I was like, I'm trying to pinpoint something, but I feel like they did their work. They did what they needed to do. But I'm looking into my notes here, and I wrote down, this is so nitpicky. I don't even know if it counts anymore. But sometimes I felt like they held their poses too long after the song was over. And I was like, okay, you can get off stage now. Like, why are you still standing there? And that's what annoyed me slightly. And I don't even know why. Like, I think just because we get it, the show's, it's the music is amazing. Choreography is on point. You can move to the next scene. And I think that little thing it started to bother me at one point.
I hear you. This is a long show. Like, it's 3 hours. Like, we could chop a good 10, 20 minutes out of this sucker by just moving along after the end of each song. Like, just move it along. We don't have to have a 20-minute clap break every time somebody finishes. Like, Omen River, sure. That one absolutely deserves the big applause it got. But like other ones where it's like, okay, it was good production number. Move it along. Let's go.
Yeah. because I feel like when they're there for a little too long, it makes me, it feels like a concert all of a sudden instead of a musical. And at the same time, I'm realizing like, okay, maybe this is just the style of the show, and that's why they're holding it. As was mentioned in the notes, that this is considered one of the first musicals, so that's just kind of how it is. But at the same time, since we watched a production that was done fairly recently, I would say they could cut like 5 minutes off if they just kind of went to the next scene. So that was
agreed.
And it is kind of the actor's choice too, because it's an etiquette thing, right? In musical theater, when a song or piece or whatever is performed so well that the audience goes nuts, there's a politeness to standing out there and accepting the thank you graciously. And nowadays, it's transcended even that etiquette to become an appreciation for what is now an ode to history. So it has not just the etiquette of accepting and appreciating graciously the people who want to say thank you for the performance. It's also a way that we sort of elevate our thinking beyond the self-conscious and remember what it's about. It's about the history. It's about the message of this piece. And that little bit at the end, it's so we can all kind of remember that. At the same time, it is important, like you said, it isn't a concert, it is a musical, and it is almost a 3-hour production. So any time where we can sort of save a little bit of time while not taking away from saying thank you, it's a good thing in my book.
I think one of my favorite backstage stories I ever heard about audiences and applause was from Chita Rivera, who, it's funny, Elena and I are actually talking about her prior to recording, but she originated the role of Anita in West Side Story, and they did did previews out in Washington before making it to Broadway. And Chita Rivera reminisced once about how on the first night they performed America, the audience at the end of the song clap, 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 clap. The actresses all kind of whiz their way off stage, and then they keep hearing the clapping, and they look out through the back of the curtain, and sure enough, the audience is standing up, and they're all kind of like, do we go back out there? Do we like go back out and do something else for them? And the stage manager just came and said, nope, they're going to settle down again. We're going to keep the show moving. It's a long show. So it's one of those things of like knowing the balance. Like there are times watching like a performer where they just kind of know when to kind of give the audience their moment to appreciate and then kind of get back into the story. Because you never want to detract too long from the story. Because you're right, then it starts to become like a concert and it's like, all right, here we go. Another song. Like, pop it out. Like, it kind of loses some of that authenticity of you don't know when an applause is genuine and when it's just kind of like, we're at the end of the song, we're all going to clap until somebody else stops clapping around me. Oh, we're all still clapping. Okay, we're going to keep going here.
Yes, I agree with that.
It's one of those things. Elena, what was your weakest element?
Well, it's sort of a combination of what everybody has said. I also found the length to be a bit of a thing, and that the pacing really felt like it dragged for me. And I think too, part of it again is like structural, like just with like, you know, the age of this particular piece. It felt like in every single production number, like chop a couple of verses and a chorus out of those, just like, let's tighten it up a little bit. Like we kind of get the point, you know? Yes. And I'm not quite certain what some of it, like it wasn't necessarily adding new information or new story elements or driving the plot forward or driving character forward. Quite often it felt like it was just because this is a really awesome, fun song and we're going to keep on singing it. Or it's because it's a really, you know, it's a song that's full of history and full of emotion and is connected to something bigger. And so we're going to give it its due. But it felt like everything was getting its due in this, a whole lot. And so because of that, it sort of, I think, took away from the specialness of certain moments, because it felt like every single moment was trying to be like a moment. And so yeah, so like the pacing and some of that sort of structural stuff, I thought was I could have been perhaps revisited in a different way or in a more contemporary way.
Yeah.
And then doubling back on the conversation that you were having earlier about like just in terms of the character work and the caricature and the sort of I don't know. I agree too. It was like whether it was like a directing thing or an acting thing, the sort of inconsistency of performances that were there, because like some of it really did delve into a lot of shrieking at times as a choice, but then it would, then there's a flip where it was like really grounded in the authentic. And so it was, sort of smoothing out some of those edges between the different styles. But those two things were things that stuck out to me as sort of being the weakest elements of the piece.
I hear you. No, that was a perfect summation of all our points perfectly. Alana, you're such an educator. You just know how to do a perfect summation of all our of all our different talking points. It's great. All right, Alicia, we're gonna let you kick off the next question, which is: do you think this production is worth the watch? Now that you've seen it, would you recommend it to other people?
Okay. So when I first watched this, the first time I watched it, I said to myself, like, I don't know. It was like a heavy maybe, sort of leaning towards no. But I think that was just my personal preference of what I like to enjoy watching. And I started to analyze it a bit, and I realized this production, I think, is worth the watch in terms of if no one has ever heard of Showboat before and they want to look into other musical theaters, maybe the musical theater that might have started, or the musical, that started everything potentially. If you want to look into that and the historical moments in it as well, the racial issues, like it's an important. I think it is an important piece of work. I don't know if I would watch it again though. But honestly, I think it's just my personal preference. I think. So I know I'm giving you a heavy maybe right now, and I wanna give you a yes or no.
No, maybes are good. Like maybes are perfect waiting for some of these shows where it's like you got to be in the right mood to watch it, and it's got to be the right time. It's like watching one of the big epic movies, Godfather, Titanic, any of those kind of big long epics where it's like if you're gonna watch it, strap in. It's definitely not a Marvel movie where you can get in and get out in a nice hour and a half.
Yes, and I think for me too, I found that the voices, the singing, it was pretty close to opera, right? Like, was I okay? Great. I'm hoping I'm using the right terminology here.
Yeah.
And I found it a little.
Operatic.
It was very operatic, and I found it a little hard to understand. I put the captions on because we were watching this through a screen, but which helped me. So yes, but to answer your question straightforward, yes, I do think this production is worth watching because I think it's a good production to analyze and think about what's important. What are you taking away from this? And we might talk about this a little bit later, but like, how can this production potentially be put on now? So I'm going to say yes. I think, yes, it's a great production to watch, and it is worth watching.
Very good. Ben?
I give it an absolute yes. And I'll tell you why. It's because it, for me, was a gateway back. This is music that is in me because not only I loved Old Man River and I sang it when I was a kid, but it's so iconic that we hear it sometimes in other things. You'll be watching TV, you'll get a commercial, and sometimes the music permeates. So it was interesting for me to have something that brought me back. I found myself watching this show, and then I watched the 1951 version, and then I cracked a book, and now I'm reading Old Man River and singing with my friend who plays piano. And if it weren't for somebody saying, okay, let's revive this with new light, then maybe it's something that I wouldn't have taken another look at again, right? We just leave things in the past. Same, I know I referenced this before for Jesus Christ Superstar, right? You see the two versions and you say, okay, great. Well, now a more modern approach with John Legend in it, and they actually nailed it. So for people who love the music and want to be reminded about what type of feelings and emotions it, invigorated in them before, it's a great way to remember. I definitely wouldn't watch it every day of the week because I don't have 3 hours to, donate to something like that. But, I would absolutely recommend it. That's for sure.
Alana, as an educator and like head of a education department, would this end up on a syllabus somewhere? Would you want to introduce it to your fellow young musical theater children's?
Loaded.
Oh my goodness me. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in obviously, examining the classics, really. I mean, of the musical theater canon and seeing, what contemporary musical theater is built on. And so, yeah, I think it's, valuable and worthwhile to revisit these sorts of shows. It's like, like when you go to like Stratford and they keep dragging Shakespeare out, but somebody's got a new interpretation and or something new to say within that text. And yeah, so like these sorts of shows, like Showboat and like Oklahoma and Carousel and some of the older works are sort of I should qualify it. By classic, I mean like from a very like
golden age,
but very like white North American point of view.
Yes.
So yeah, like worth exploring and analyzing for sure, and like looking at thematically. Definitely, I think. But same thing, like to watch this, to dedicate 3 hours to watching it, maybe once. Yeah.
I hear you. Well, I mean, for me, the fact that I also do a musical theater podcast on the side, like just the history of musicals is something where like behind me in my closet there, I have a whole 2 bookshelves full of books. And there's all types of history books on musical theater. And the fact this is part of musical theater history. And I mean, we unfortunately, because of when this came out, we don't have clips from the OG production. I mean, we have the films from the 1936 and the 1951. And we got some news clips from the Hal Prince version that was done in the 90s that kind of fizzled out when it went to Broadway with Live Ant. Shout out to you, Live Ant, Canadian producing company. But like, this is a great kind of ode to the show. Like as we talked about, it's the big, old classic piece of Showboat. Like we definitely can go. We're gonna get into this later on about how to reinterpret the show. But like, if you're wanting to show somebody like close to what Showboat probably would have looked like back in the 1930s when that old boat trudged across the stage way back when, like this is probably a pretty close adaptation of what you're going to get. So I think for a historical purpose, it's a great kind of watch because, we got to like in order to move forward in our history, we have to look at the roots and kind of grow from there to see where we've been to know kind of where we can go. It's one of those things of kind of building from the past onward, kind of building on the blocks versus knocking out the old blocks and kind of trying to reinvent the wheel when we already have a great kind of foundation we now can build. Like, I'm sure if I sat down, I could draw a line from Showboat all the way up to Hamilton. I'm sure there is some way I could weave all of them together somehow, some way in the tapestry. It's there. We just have to sit down and actually do it. But it's that thing of to understand where Hamilton, like how we got to Hamilton, you got to go back and look at Showboat. And I'm thankful that when I was at York doing my musical theater history class, our professor Marlise, shout out to you, Marlise, she actually started the whole class with our first musical being Showboat. Like she was very much like, we're starting here, then we're going to jump to Oklahoma, then we kind of went through the decades after that. but it was that thing of we're going to start at this spot and we're going to kind of grow out from here. So I think this is a great kind of time capsule piece that kind of captures that classic quality that is Showboat, as it were. Yes. Okay. So now we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this piece and kind of get into some more juicy topics. Less about the production, more just about the show itself. So first off, we have this show has historical significance, being widely considered the first musical. That being said, this is also is this piece we can still perform today. How do we go about tackling the racial issues associated with this piece? Elena, I'll let you start this one.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So,
or just the first part of the question, and
sure.
then I can move on.
Yes. So, is this a piece we can still perform today? Like we've this production was done in 2013. Mm-hmm. We're now into a new decade of time. A lot of things happened over the past decade since the show has been done. Yeah. Can we still do it today? How will we go about addressing some of the racial issues that are associated with this? Mm-hmm. There's an underbelly to this piece for sure that we'd have to talk about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the challenge with a piece like this, without sort of being a museum piece, is that it needs to have a strong point of view. And I think the director needs to come in with a strong point of view. And particularly, I mean, this is an interesting case too, right? Because this is a musical written by white men, trying to capture the experience of white people, but also Black people of the time as well, of which they have. I mean, I shouldn't speak for them, obviously, but like, I mean, considering that time period, like how much context do they have for that writing? So it's sort of based on an idea of, of how they interpret a particular experience. Now, that being said, like, I mean, like a lot of that stuff, like, music, was reclaimed and taken and reinterpreted by Black singers in performance and have become standards since then. But like for a contemporary performance, I do think it deserves some like very real re-examination in terms of just the way characters are portrayed. Like I'm thinking of like the character Julie really pops out to me because it's such a trope, like the sort of tragic mulatta trope. The woman who's trying to pass and does so, but then gets discovered and uncovered, and then her life sort of unravels into tragedy. Like I think you have to be careful sort of how you deal with those sorts of tropes, because they can it gets a little bit iffy at times. And same thing with Joe, like that's another character like where sometimes these characters feel sort of symbolic of something as opposed to being actual human beings, characters with interior lives. And wants and desires and needs, and instead are sort of held up as representing an idea of something or a feeling about something. So yeah, I think with like a strong perspective and a strong sense of direction, you can sort of incorporate some of those things into a piece like that. And I'm curious to see if that has been done or can be done. We were talking a little bit before this about how like my first experience with Showboat was that original Livent, and it toured through Vancouver, and I went and saw the show in the 90s and saw the big thing, and like that was a very markedly different take on this particular production. But they tried something. And so I appreciate that, but now I'm just rambling. Anyways, yes, I think a strong point of view, but I think you have to be sort of, I tread cautiously, I guess, would be the short answer to my rambling.
Yes. Yes. Alicia, I see you nodding there, so I'll let you jump in here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, tread cautiously is a great way to like transition. Do I think the show can be put on today? And how would it change? How would it adapt? Okay. It's hard. It's really hard for me to have a yes or no. But honestly, my heart is saying no. I don't think I would want to see this show like adapted in a way for 2021 or 21st century and beyond. I think I like where it is now, and I don't mind going watching if I could somehow like time capsule back into the early 1900s to see it as it was. I would love to do something like that and just see how life was then and compare and contrast how life is now, and specific things haven't really changed in terms of haven't changed in a huge significant way, you think, in terms of racial issues. And I think that's really interesting to examine. It's almost like a history book. I feel like this play is like a history book, picking it up, looking into it, examining it, and seeing what steps have we made and what steps do we still need to make. I don't know if I would want to see like a different interpretation. Someone has brought up Shakespeare earlier and how that has been adapted in different ways. And I start to think like, okay, Shakespeare has been adapted. Why can't this be adapted? And I don't know if I would want to sit down and watch another show about like Black people are oppressed and one day they're not going to be oppressed, smiley face. Like that's kind of what I think the message would be. I start to think I can kind of see Showboat being set in the 90s. And for some reason, I just imagine like, okay, I feel like 1990 something, like a version of that would be really good to watch. I don't know why. I feel like the 90s had so many things going on. Of course, I was, but like I've watched films and stuff. And I think I would see that interpretation, like a 1990s interpretation. Without anything other than that, I would not personally. And I'm wondering if other people, not just people of color, but just other people in general, would be interested to see a show like this. Like it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question to like talk about. But my answer is it's honestly like leave it where it is, and people can like check it out if they want to.
Yep. Agreed. Ben, I see you smirking there, so I'm really interested to hear what you have to say now.
Well, I think my response may be in perhaps small contrast with Alana and Alicia. And I'll start by addressing the original question, which I think is this show has historical significance and it's widely considered the first musical. So that being said, is this still something that we can perform today? And how would I go about tackling the racial issues? And the tertiary question was about whether or not it would deserve adaptation if we did it today. So first of all, the tertiary question of whether if we did do it today, would it deserve adaptation? So first things first, like Alana mentioned, who developed it? Okay, Hammerstein and Kern. When? 1927. Where was it premiered? In New York. So we have to think about what was going on in New York at that time. This was a time of enormous immigration. I mean, everyone from everywhere was entering. Jewish people, Mexicans, Black people, Italians, you name it, a melting pot. This was where musical theater was derived. So gay people, Black people, it didn't matter. If you had chops, you could be a part of the group, so to speak. So in that, I'm addressing that Hammerstein and Kern are two people who are so immersed in progressive culture for their time that I would argue that who better to be able to share their personal experience with what was going on. So I would almost argue that Hammerstein and Kern were two of the perfect people who were the most immersed in progressive culture for their time, right? In terms of tackling the racial issues, I wouldn't tackle them. I think it's in the writing. It's already done. The only work that we have to do is to cast it well and to make sure that it's performed well. We focus on the production because the writing already carries us in terms of the racial issues. In fact, I'm mixed, right? So I'm looking at this piece and I find myself crying, thinking about how privileged I am. And sure, I've encountered racism before, but like I can go to school, I have a job, I make money, I have friends, people don't pick on me every single day. I'm not oppressed in any way. And this, I don't think, to answer now Alicia's development in the conversation, I don't think it should be adapted. I think it's for us to have a view into history, to look at now and feel how lucky we are. And I think it's the best time when we look at things like the BLM movement, for example. People are opening up now to this type of material. They're beginning to maybe not understand, but at least develop an appetite for understanding. So I wouldn't develop it to adapt it to be modern. I would promote it as a view into where we came from. So I that's really all I can say about that.
Okay. I think you have to be critical of it too, in the sense that, even the assumption that it's widely considered the first musical, but according to who, and whose standards are we judging this on? It's the first musical that was on Broadway or sort of had a certain level of success. And when you think about it in those terms, there's a lot of people that automatically excludes from the conversation when considering whether something's legitimate and whether something can legitimately be called the first musical. So even that, I think that has to be questioned as well. I take the point, definitely about sort of looking at it and viewing it, but I don't know. I think that it's also to look at it. You need to use a critical eye on the past, but also the present and all the stuff that went into structuring a show like that, and how the people who were given power to be able to write something that could be seen by millions of people in the first place, to write something that would have the posterity to exist and live on, 60, 70, 80 years down the line and be sort of gifted the title of being the first piece of musical theater ever. I think that there are that it automatically excludes, whole swaths of people in the first place.
For my 2 cents as in the room, not that I have much more to add. So from the historical standpoint, I definitely think this piece should be studied. Always, if you're going to do a musical, Western civilization musical theater kind of trope through the catalog, I definitely think you want to start with Showboat. As for should we perform it today, I do think there is a place for the show today. There are a lot of great timely topics, whether it's appropriation, like the fact that the whole main plot focuses around this white woman who appropriates this song from a black woman and then gets famous off it and travels the world and starts a whole new career. There's something in that still has a very modern feel to, and also same thing with prejudice. Having seen what happened in 2020, it's sad and scary to think just how far, and then kind of how not so far we've come where people like Pete still hold sway in the world and can really kind of turn the tide on someone who is really doing their own thing and is doing nothing to deserve the treatment that she gets, Ms. Laverne. So I do think there is a place for it today, because the themes are so sadly timeless. But I think what needs to be done is this needs to be an honest portrayal of the past. It's versus what we got where Pete was the cartoony Southern guy. Pete is someone who we could see in the world today. I mean, heck, 2 weeks ago we saw what happened in the U.S. Capitol. These people are out there in the world. They're not this bygone era of a person, sadly. They should be, but they're not. But own that part of the story. I would love to see a production that strips away the veneer of razzle dazzle Broadway, and let's lean into the darkness that the story has, the human struggle that is really there for all the characters, whether it's Magnolia and her husband and what they go through, because I'm sure there are many couples out there who are struggling financially because one part of the partnership is philandering and floundering, and then the other person is left with a child, and it's like, what do I do? Or you have people like Ms. Laverne who are basically chased away for no good reason at all besides racial prejudice. There is timely topics in this piece that I think if we just stripped away some of the veneer of Broadway glitz that the show has and just got it back down to the humanity of what the story is, I do think there's something really powerful that could be said. And the fact that we do it in this time period of 1800s into the 1900s and show that mirror up to society and go, you think we've progressed so far and we are all so much further than we think we are, but really are we? And ask that really deep question that we all kind of need to ask, because even this week with the inauguration, we're all kind of whooping and cheering that, oh yes, we've turned the page, we're moving forward, but it's like, are we really have we really gone too far when only 2 weeks ago we had the storming of the U.S. Capitol? Are we really moving this much further ahead in time period? I don't know. And I think that's something this piece can really highlight. It's one of these great pieces, kind of like To Kill a Mockingbird, another really interesting piece of literature and also a play that once again holds the mirror up to society and kind of goes, yeah, we're set in this time period, but why is it so resonating with us today? What is it about about these particular stories that have such a timeless quality about it? What is that saying about us as a human race, just a general human race, that we still have to face these themes and these topics? So I do, yeah.
Alicia picked up on something really interesting, or I was making a connection between something that you just said and what Alicia was saying about, I guess, in having these sort of big conversations that are taking place and have been taking place for a long time, but just to varying degrees depending on what your identity is really. There is this idea often in some of these sort of more older plays where like you were saying, Alicia, about oh, it's another piece where all the Black people are oppressed, and this is these people where racism is sort of held up as sort of a cartoonish sort of villainy that's only practiced by these people who are very they're the evil people, but not all people are evil like this. It's these evil racists here. Whereas sort of the conversation now, I feel that's happening, and if any of you guys want to chime in on this, please, but has I think become maybe perhaps more nuanced in the sense that it's oh no, it's it's all around us. It's built into structures into the systems of the world that we live in. And it's not always people, going around calling the cops on, no, actually it is often, but there's like a subtlety to a lot of it that is not always the mustache twirling person who's, wreaking havoc. Anyways, that is just something that I
think you're absolutely right. And I think with a piece like this that has such a big community element to it, I think you really can get into that element of a community where it's like, you're right. Like, yes, there are the Petes of the world who are blatantly the bad guys of the piece, the stereotypical what we think of as these types of people. But you're right. Unfortunately, in our world, there are a lot of, as Shakespeare would say, there are a lot of snakes hiding beneath the flower. I think is the line, or the line that Lady Macbeth says, "Be the snake beneath the flower." There's a lot of those people in the world who, we had David Collins on from the Stratford Fest when he goes, like, that's something that he had to learn in the world, was just, it's one thing to like be concerned about the people in the pickup trucks who are very blatant who they are. It's the people in the suits who have a much more subtle way of getting you between the ribs. And I think that's what this piece can bring if you do the community element of the story right. Like, it's one thing to have Pete as the central kind of villain of the first part of the show, the first quarter of the show. It's another thing to kind of build that bigger world of the people who are around Pete, who support Pete in maybe big ways or little ways. There is some there you can make a real comment about society that we have to do better. We have to do better and look at everybody, not just the people who are really obvious. Because unfortunately, there are people who are not so obvious who are doing very bad, terrible things to others in our communities. So, yeah.
Before we jump to the next question, something that this conversation has made me think of. Yes, there is importance in this musical, and there's so many truths, hard-hitting truths and Pete's in the world. And I was thinking, how this musical is based off of a book. Like, I feel like I could see myself reading the book, or even watching a film, or seeing a painting resembling this musical. But there's something about sitting down and watching a theater performance of this show. I feel like that might be overwhelming for some people. And honestly, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. I know for me personally, I would be like, whoosh, like very overwhelmed with some of the blatant racism in there, and the subtle, like, oh yeah, the colored people are sitting in the mezzanine. Like, that made me feel so angry. But I'm wondering, at the time when they were watching it, they were just like, oh yeah, it's 1927. That's appropriate. But now it's just like, I would probably just stand up and leave. Like, it's, I think those little subtle things are what make me even more upset. But honestly, if this play was done, we can talk about this question for a very long time, but
we can.
If the play randomly did actually come out to Toronto for some reason, I probably would go and see it. So even though I'm saying like, no, I probably would go and see it to see how they would do it. So there's that.
Yeah. It's a fascinating question. Like, I remember us having a big debate about this in my musical theater history class with Marlise. This was literally one of the first questions she posed to us. It was a very similar formatted question that really sparked a 3-hour-long debate in the classroom of just going back and forth across the room with each other. That's what I like about this piece, is it does generate some really fascinating bits of conversation. But speaking of good conversation, we're going to get into the next question, which I find really interesting, which is the song, which we've talked about quite a bit here, Old Man River, is one of the most covered songs of the Broadway canon. It's being sung by a wide spectrum of performers across all genders, races, and ethnicities. Going forward, which artist should sing it? Does the fact that this song has transcended the show and become a standard allow for it to be sung by anyone? Ben, as someone who has, as you said, sung it openly and proudly since being a kid, where do you stand on this song and kind of who gets to sing it?
I think absolutely that it's for everybody, unless it's in context of the play. If you take it outside of obviously in the play, a Black person has to sing it because the character who sings it is a Black person. If you take it outside of the context of the play, I think that it's a worthwhile piece for anybody to become familiar with, because that's how we connect. That's how we do it. For example, if we look in the play, Julie Laverne is accepted into the Black community. And the way that that occurs is when they realize she knows all of the words to a Negro spiritual. Fish gotta swim and birds gotta fly. And when the people see that she knows all of the words, she's singing it, she's appreciating it, she's making it her own. She's oh yeah, well, I suppose she is mixed as well. So that's, I guess, where she gets it from. But in any event, I think that we connect through music. It's the music that brings us together. I think that that's something that we can't forget. And the more people are aware of the message, the more people who care, the closer together I think that we can get. So, and you know, going back, I think to just to what you said that really hit me, Mac, it was, this does the best when it's completely honest. And you're absolutely right. The show doesn't put out in bold, racism is bad. That's not the show. It's actually a love story between Gay and Noli. And in the background, we have the reality of the time that's candidly shown. If we think of the words in Old Man River, tote that barge, lift that bale, you get a little drunk and you land in jail. I gets weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. You have just a regular man, a normal human being who has done nothing to deserve the reality that he has. And we get that, not smacked into our face, just a candid, honest truth shared. And all of a sudden we question why. What does Joe do to deserve that? And it's a bigger why for all of us. So I think that the song has transcended for positive reasons. It's a good thing. I think that through music, we grow connectedness. And to tell somebody, you know, you can't sing this song because you don't get where it comes from. Well, it's an opportunity, a learning opportunity to understand where it comes from. Maybe not understand deeply, but it's a step in the right direction. That's what I think.
Alicia, what are your thoughts?
So since the question asked for artists, which artist could sing this today, I started to actually think, like, who can I see singing this? So I made I came up with like 3 main people. Ooh. I don't think this person's a singer, but this who I imagined first, Adrian Lester, the English actor. He popped into my mind. I feel like he would do it justice. I feel like he could sing. He could pull it off. And then I also wrote down Alicia Keys. She's not an actor, but she has range and emotion. Yes, and maybe does. Since we have the same name, she popped into my mind. But the main person that I could see doing this song justice would be Julie Black. And I was able to see her in Caroline or Change last year around the same time, January, February time. And she did such an amazing job. I forgot how powerful her voice is. She would do this song justice. But and I know I listed all Black talent and Black artists, and I think that's just because the way the show sets it up, I just had that in my mind. But I looked up Judy Garland's rendition of it and Frank Sinatra. Judy's was amazing, loved it. So it made me think, like, it doesn't have to be a Black artist that sings this song. It's a song that can be sung by anyone who relates to the struggle. Any type of, pick a struggle, and then you can sing about it in this song. I feel I would prefer if a person of color sang it, preferably Black, but because that's just the way it's set up. But at the same time, I'm thinking of what Alana said earlier about how the play is written by 2 white men's portrayal of Black people. So it's like, I guess anyone can really sing the song as long as you're really feeling it and you're singing it from a truthful place.
Elena, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a weird that the fact that like you're like, yes, it's like these written by these two white guys, but it's so associated with a certain character in a show. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's context specific. Like, we were talking earlier about how like I think there's value. Like Ben, you made a lovely point about like, connecting with other people through music, connecting with people who may be different than you through music, and that's a really wonderful vehicle. But at the same time, and I'm being wishy-washy, but at the same time, Old Man River to me is one of these songs that there's a lot of baggage that gets associated with the song. And within that baggage, there are certain things that if you haven't had that lived experience, you just can't understand. And I mean, that being said, that's a different thing, now compared to what it was when it was initially written in terms of baggage. But like, there is that sort of racial, maybe baggage is the wrong word, but like all the stuff that comes along with it that sort of now is associated with the song and exists alongside the song when you choose to open your mouth and sing the song publicly anyways. So I think that, yeah, like I don't know, like do I have interest in seeing certain people interpret this song? Like, would I be offended? Maybe not offended, but would I be super interested in it? I don't know. And I do agree, Alicia, that Julie would be awesome singing the song. I was in that production with her and she was like amazing to work with. And she just like, yeah, she would kill a song like this. So I agree. Yeah.
You were in that show?
I was, yeah.
I'm going to look at my program again. I still have
it. Well, I mean, for me, this has been something we've actually talked a lot about on the podcast I do with my friend Autumn, because we've covered quite a few shows, particularly by Aarons and Flaherty, who wrote Once on This Island, Ragtime, and once again are white composers who write some very beautiful music for BIPOC performers. So for me, just re-looking at some of the lyrics again and just the way some of the lyrics are written, like it does have a very kind of character voice in mind that you can't help but escape. Like just the affectation that you hear and the way the lyrics that were chosen for this, like just certain phrases, I just go, I think this, like this is a big musical theater canon. There are lots of songs for people to sing. Like if I was doing a cabaret, would Oh Man River be one of the songs I would probably put on my list? Probably not. I probably would put Bring Him Home on my list instead, because I think that fits me a little bit better. And there's just certain songs that I just go, there are better people to tell that story in that song, whether it's in the show or outside the show. Like certain songs, they transcend the show, that could be sung cabaret no matter what. Like there's the song from Miss Saigon, I Give My Life for You. Beautiful song. Works great outside the show. Then it also can be sung by anybody, man, woman. Oh, I wouldn't care. It's a gorgeous song about parent and child. But then you put it inside the show, it has a whole new, deeper, painful context. This song, there's just so much history behind this song that I just think it deserves. I don't want to see somebody who doesn't have a good strong history to go with this song sing the song. Like for example, Colm Wilkinson does a version of this song. One of my favorite actors in the world, Mr. Colm Wilkinson, the original Jean Valjean, wonderful man. But I don't think this was his song to sing. I think that he has other songs that are more his song that fit his story a bit better. This is such a wide canon. There are certain songs that fit certain people. Like, it's kind of like the song from Hairspray, I Know Where I've Been. Great song, great message, but there's just something special that when it comes from somebody like a Queen Latifah, like a Jennifer Hudson singing it, there's that bit more in touch they get with the story and what the lyrics are talking about that can't be reached by somebody else, like, say, somebody like me singing that song. I love the lyrics. I think they're beautiful lyrics, but there's just something about some people who come from a certain history and a background that can just get a little bit deeper into that song. So while I think sure anybody can sing the song, I just think you have to look at the song, look at the lyrics, look at the story you're telling with the lyrics, because that's what musical theater songs do. It's one of our great things, is that even when you pluck a song out of a show, there is still a story being told, and it's a lot of times in character, because even if you take the character out of the song, there is still some form of that character's remnants left behind, because the song is written for that character in that place, in that time, in that show. So there is something there. Like Joe is always going to be part of this song and the history of who that character is. It's always going to be the shell of what the song is, no matter who kind of steps in and fills the voice. There's a history to this song that you just can't kind of get away from, and I'm okay with that, because it's a big canon. There are lots of other great songs for me to tackle, and I'll happily sit and listen to Ben or Alana or Alicia or anybody sing this song. But I just don't think I just think for certain people, we get for certain groups, there are certain songs that we should just kind of be a little bit more mindful of. Just be a little bit more respectful of the history.
It's not meant to be superficially appropriated, right? It really needs to be done well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. You definitely just don't want to slap it on there for the sake of doing it. Like, if you're going to do it, you're going to earn the history. You're going to listen to the lyrics, follow the lyrics, treat it like a true piece of work that it is. Don't just, it's a good song, let me sing it for the sake of singing it, because that just totally misses the mark of what the history of this piece of this song has. I mean, it is and the fact that we can go through the list of Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, Colm Wilkinson, like, so many people have covered this song. It is one of the most quintessential pieces of musical theater. I think anybody can hear it and know exactly what it is, no matter who you are. But yeah, it's a fascinating song with a fascinating history. Okay, last question of the night. Woohoo, we're on to this. Whew. Okay, so would you consider this musical's ending with the reunion of Gaylord and Magnolia and their daughter happy? Does the ending lend itself to different interpretations in its staging? Alicia, I'll let you start, since you were talking about reinterpretations and new stagings.
Would I consider it a happy ending? No. I felt extremely sad by the ending. And I think it was because I was still thinking about Julie. And I was like, can you bring her back, please? I felt like the ending was so sudden. I wasn't expecting it to end like that. With the staging of, you got Nola, you have Gay over there, and then the daughter. And then it's just like blackout. And an acting coach told me that a best way to have a scene is to start in the middle and I can't remember exactly what he said. End before things get too interesting. I wrote it down somewhere. But that's kind of how I felt the way this ended. I felt like things just started and then it ended before things were over. I was very sad by it. It can be interpreted in a happy way that Nola has finally been brought back together with her long lost husband, who had the gambling problem and is back now. And I was looking at their daughter and I was like, oh my God, she's so old now. Like, so much time has passed. I was sad by it. Can it be interpreted in a positive way? Sure. I'm still sad thinking about it. But at the same time, it's nice that at least he came back and it wasn't just an open ending of Nola picking up a new life and she's just a very successful performer now and that's it. So I was happy to see him at least return. So there's my take on it.
Alana, what are your thoughts on the ending?
I do not like the ending. I mean, I guess it is, what it is or of its time, but yes, I feel similarly that it's so disappointing that like after all those years, and this man who's abandoned his family and, just pieced out and did his thing because he decided he couldn't hack it anymore. And then, shows up for this like wonky sort of happily ever after that's sort of like shoved into the ending really quickly that seems to kind of come out of nowhere. Like that, it feels very sudden and it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of build up to the ending. And yes, I agree, Alicia, with what you just said about like the whole second act, like with the time passing and like the amount of time that passes. It's sort of hard to get a through line on like any of these characters who we've met. Like, what happened to Julie? Where did she go? And like, then there's this sudden reunion at the end. So yeah, it feels a bit like unfinished in a way. Yeah, that's where I'll leave it.
No, it's a good spot. I mean, Showboat kind of kicked off the weird ending of musicals, like which followed into things like Oklahoma, where it ends with the murder of Judd, and then somehow they all drive out in the buggy with the fringe on top, singing Oklahoma, or like the fact that you have Carousel, which focuses on domestic abuse, and yet somehow at the end Billy Bigelow walks into heaven.
I know.
Not sure how that happens.
Yeah,
it's a thing. Like there's quite a few of these golden age musicals that have really polar done endings where it's like you could see in the day it was meant to be happy, but then when you look at it deeper, it's like, oh, like this doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah, like there's like, I guess maybe like the impulse to just like, oh, we don't want the audience to go home without their happy ending. Or I mean, I mean, to be quite honest, I haven't thought through enough to like, what that actually means. But yeah, there is something like these dark themes that are sort of explored with this weird gloss over top of like singing and dancing, and then these happy endings. I don't know. Maybe there's something weird and sinister going on. I don't know. But yeah.
Absolutely. There definitely is a weird mix of that. Ben, what do you think about this ending?
Well, I'm not going to say that I liked it or disliked it. It was a choice, a big choice, especially contrasted if you take into consideration the 1951 version where they actually do tie Julie back in at the end. And the parting shot is her waving, or not waving. She's sort of standing in the shadows and she walks out into light and she's smiling to see that her telling Gaylord about the kid was the impetus for their reunion. In a way, it sort of absolves her of some of her guilt. And we get sort of the happy ending that we're looking for, not just for Gay and for Magnolia, but also we get a little bit of something for Julie too. For this ending in the show, it was probably for me the most modern sort of contemporary choice that they made, to end it open, to leave it unfinished, and also to have the daughter, rather than being a baby or just born, or Magnolia still being pregnant, the choice is to have her fully grown. And what are the implications of the amount of time that has really transpired where he's been gone? And when he comes back, for me, it was probably the best little bit of acting that this sort of brooding, handsome, typecast lead did, was the parting shot, the look at the end, where you can see in his face guilt for time lost. I found a lot of the performance on this gentleman's behalf. I mean, he could dance, he could sing, he could act, but there was a lot of knitty eyebrow acting. I'm knitting my eyebrows and looking at you. And for me, this was kind of the deepest moment where we get to see a bit more range, a bit more color from him. So the more that I'm talking, I would actually say that I did like it. I appreciate the boldness to make a different choice, to say, and one more thing that we have to consider is when we look back at the previous ending, you could interpret that unhappily if you live today. You go, who wants to take back that gambling river rat? Who would want to do that today? But back then, it's so important for the family to be together. There are social implications. It fulfills a social caprices. So it's always happy. You see Parthy, who's the most conservative and hates the guy. She's happy that he's back. So what does that say? But today, I found it was more of a taste for a modern audience, the most sort of contemporary taste that we get, to have this father who returns, and we don't know, is it going to work out between them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said, Ben. Like it is a very modern ending, because you definitely could see if this was done back in the 1920s, like definitely you could see like the fact, like just looking up, I've never read the book that this is based on, but just reading the Wikipedia plot summary, it says that apparently he doesn't come back in the book at the end. The book ends in a much different way.
It's kind of a show that lends itself to different endings interpreted. The film's different from the book, is different from this modern revival. Everybody sort of takes a shot at the ending to decide how they want to interpret that.
But that's kind of fun that you do get that, because I mean, I can definitely see different reinterpretations of this ending, that it's like, oh, okay, definitely definitely you can make, as a director and as a performer, you definitely got to make some strong choices by the end. You can't just rest on the, oh, it's Showboat, yay, it's like yay for Showboat. There actually is like, no, as a director and as a performer, you actually got to make a choice about how you're going to interpret this ending, because that's the last thing the audience gets. You're either going to leave them with a good bad taste in their mouth, or just a plain bad taste where it's like, oh, nope, you just spoiled the whole show with that really kind of bad note of an ending. So it's really interesting. I do think that this is one of the most open interpretations of an ending of a musical we have. Most musicals are very kind of set with what their ending is going to be. I mean, West Side Story ends, Tony shot, Maria walks off in the funeral march. In Oklahoma, that one's a little bit more open. You get a little bit more interpretation how you want to play the death of Judd and the trial and the ending song. Not much wiggle room though, because it's still the song at the end. You got to kind of sing it happily. It's the song. It's written that way. But like there are very few shows that actually get an ending where it's like, oh, we can play with this a little bit. Like another one I'm thinking is like Parade, Ragtime. There's a few of those really interesting shows that have endings that can have a bitter but powerful ending that you either are going to go for it or you're going to play it the safer route. And I think this show or this production that we saw kind of walked that nice middle line of, there was some pain and there was some questioning, but then there also was just the fact the final shot is the two of them back together with the daughter in the middle. It's kind of like, it does have that family unity shot while also having that bit of that darker undertow of what's the future? Like what happens when the curtain goes down? Do they live happily ever after on the barge, or do they part ways again? Like it's one of those great kind of open, weird endings. So yeah, it's once again, this musical just full of choice.
Hope framed with uncertainty.
Ooh, Ben, well said. Well said. Well, everybody, our time on Showboat has now ended. We must dock and depart this vessel of the past. But before we all go tonight, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And to my wonderful panelists, thank you for being here to talk about this really kind of fascinating piece of theater history. I would love for you all to kind of give your socials a plug, or if you got a website or a podcast, a YouTube channel you do posts on, happy to kind of support you and send some love your way there. So Alicia, we'll start with you. Where can people find and follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, and my Instagram is Alicia Plummer. And I also have a YouTube channel called Alicia Online with 3 E's. So see if you can find me there. That'd be cool. I have a TikTok, but I don't know if this is the place to plug my TikTok. So I'll just
go for it.
Okay.
Go for it. Plug your TikTok. Why not?
My TikTok is Hi Alicia by Alicia. So yeah. all different 3 elements of social media you can find me on.
Wonderful. Alana, where can people find and follow you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at AR underscore. How does that work? Hold on. Okay. At AR underscore Hibbs. That's HIBBS.
Got it.
AR underscore Hibbs. Also, I will say, check out the website for the Canadian College of Performing Arts. We just started our new session in school this past week. The students are back in the building and they're gearing up for some really cool performances. The Ensemble Theatre Company is doing a production of If Then right now, which is being directed by a wonderful BC director, but does a lot of work out in Ontario too, for depending on who's listening to this podcast, named Sarah Jean Hosey. She's directing that. And we've got a couple of the other plays coming up. And so we're one of the few performing arts colleges that's able to be open in this crazy time that we're living in. So if you can support live theater and students who are doing live theater, there's live streaming events and sort of digital events that are going on as we go forward. So you can check that out too.
Love that. Ben, where can people find and follow you? Can they find a version of you singing Old Man River online?
No plugs. I just want to say thank you very much. I love being here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back again in the near future with another piece. You can find and follow me, everybody, at Mackenzie Horners. Look for the ginger-haired photo on all the socials. You also can follow my podcast, Before the Downbeat, where we do talk about musicals. So if you liked this, you can get a lot more of it. Come on out, give that a listen. You also listen to our episodes on Mamma Mia, which I know Alana's done. We also did Anna Green Gables this season too, which I also know Alana's done. We've done quite a few.
We've done a few.
But yeah, give those a listen. Also check out Cup of Hemlock. We have lots of great stuff coming. We have our COH shorts, which are these great kind of fun short scenes we're staging. We also have all our other reviews we've done, our duet reviews, which as of this episode, I do believe our duet review all about the TikTok musical Ratatouille has now come out. So you can check out our thoughts on that, as well as our thoughts about the Les Miserables stage concert. So lots of great stuff on our platform to check out as well once you're done listening and watching us. Until then, everybody, thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next time on another The Cup Reviews. Thanks, everybody. Bye.